I played a lot of great games in 2023, from older titles that have been on my backlog for a very long time, to a decent handful of games that actually released this year. 2023 is definitely going down in history as another great year in gaming, at least for me personally. And in this video, I'd like to touch on some of the standouts that I played over these past 12 months. To start off, as some of you who have been following the channel may know, I've gotten really into retro handhelds this year, with my favorite being the Mii Mini Plus. This thing has been a very convenient way for me to catch up on some retro games that I've been meaning to get around to. The first big one I played on here was Final Fantasy IX, which I absolutely loved. And more recently, I checked out Fire Emblem The Binding Blade, and oh man, getting to play classic Fire Emblem on a handheld where I can use save states makes these games much less stressful, because I'm the type of person who can't let any of my characters die, which leads to a lot of frustration and resetting when I play classic Fire Emblem games on native hardware. So having a device like the Mii Mini to play these games and drop save states whenever I wanted to instead of having to start the whole chapter over if one of my guys died was a godsend. Over on the PS4 side of things, I checked my third Yakuza game off the backlog with Yakuza Kiwami 2 at the beginning of the year, and then I moved on to the first Insomniac Spider-Man game with plans to get to Miles Morales and Spider-Man 2 before the year ended, but unfortunately I still haven't gotten around to those. And that's mostly because I've been way too busy playing all of the heavy hitters that Nintendo put out this year, but we'll get to those in a bit. Continuing with some more PlayStation stuff, I haven't really talked about anime a whole lot on here, but if there's one thing you should know about me, it's that I am a huge fan of One Piece. So one day I decided to sit down and play through the story mode of One Piece Pirate Warriors 4, the most recent Musou game set in the One Piece universe. And while I had a lot of fun, I felt that it was over way too quickly. The unfortunate thing about Pirate Warriors 4 specifically is that while in my opinion it has by far the best combat that the series has ever seen, it is severely lacking in content. As a series that has always done its best to cover the majority of the big One Piece story arcs, Pirate Warriors 4 completely skips over several key arcs that have actually always been present in the games since the very first Pirate Warriors all the way back on the PS3. And in a game that is already full of asset reuse, it's very confusing as to why they didn't port many of these levels over. This led to me just wanting to go back to Pirate Warriors 3, which I actually did, but the whole time I was playing it, I was missing Pirate Warriors 4 ultra fast combat and super fun special moves. But either way, I still enjoy all of the Pirate Warriors games for different reasons, so if you're a fan of One Piece like me, I highly recommend checking both these titles out. They also go on sale like all the time, so you can get them for pretty cheap. One other older game that I finally finished this year was the first Bayonetta. I had a pretty good time with this one, but I never really felt like I got good at the game. Yeah, I was able to get to the end and beat the final boss, but a lot of the time I felt like I was just barely scraping by. And the game really made sure I knew this by giving me a stone trophy at the end of almost every level. Did anyone else feel this way about the original Bayonetta, or am I just really that bad? I'd like to one day get better at this game because when I did occasionally get into a rhythm with the combat, it felt really good. Either way, I'm excited to move on to the sequels eventually, as I've heard really good things about Bayonetta 2 and 3, and I think they look like a lot of fun. Okay, and with that little mini episode of Backlog Journal out of the way, I'd like to move on to my favorite games that actually came out in 2023, starting with Fire Emblem Engage. With how big of a hit Fire Emblem Three Houses was, I found it kind of surprising how little hype there was surrounding this game. I bought it day one, but I didn't really end up actually playing it until about a month ago. You really can't ever go wrong with a Fire Emblem game. It's like the Dragon Quest series where the gameplay at its core never really changes, and I say that as a compliment. If you're in the mood for a challenging strategy RPG, you can go into any entry in the Fire Emblem series knowing exactly that that is what you're going to get. And of course, the same can be said for Fire Emblem Engage. Right off the bat, I have to say I love the art style they went for in this game. The bright colors almost feel like a callback to the GBA games, and while I do really like the grittier looking Fire Emblem games, the bright colors are a nice change of pace and suit the very over-the-top character designs featured in this game. The new Engage mechanic that has you teaming up with the spirits or whatever of old Fire Emblem characters seemed a bit gimmicky at first, and I was kind of put off by by it when I saw trailers, but I ended up really liking it. Really all it does is just add an extra layer of strategy to the battles, and who doesn't want more strategy in their strategy game, right? In the months leading up to Sea of Stars release, people were hyping this game up, and honestly, it really wasn't on my radar at all. If anything, I was very skeptical about it. It seemed like people couldn't talk about this game without bringing up Chrono Trigger, the game that Sea of Stars heavily draws inspiration from. And I just remember thinking, yeah, right, this game is not even gonna come close to being as good as Chrono Trigger. There's no way they'll be able to capture the magic and charm of that classic. And then I played it, and it's actually very good. Sea of Stars actually feels like a bit of a mashup between a lot of different games, and yet its story and world still feel very unique and original. The structure of the world and combat remind me a bit of Chrono Trigger, the character designs remind me of Golden Sun, and then throw in a little bit of Mario RPG DNA because you have the action commands and battles to keep them engaging, and oh man, it's just really good, and it all just works so well. If you're a fan of any of the games I just mentioned, do yourself a favor and check out Sea of Stars. It was definitely my biggest surprise hit of the year. Keeping up with the RPG trend, we have the Mario RPG remake. This one was such a surprise to me when it was announced. The first thing I have to say about this game is how happy I am with the art style. They completely kept the original game's artistic vision intact while breathing new life into it with tons of new animations and cutscenes. Nintendo is in a completely different mindset for Mario games than they were back in the 3DS and Wii U era. Back then, games like the Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga remake had character designs completely changed and devoid of personality to match the new Super Mario Bros. Style. Those were honestly such sad times. But with this game and the Paper Mario Thousand Year Door remake that's coming next year, I'm feeling very optimistic for the future of Mario RPGs. I have such fond memories of playing this game on the Super Nintendo as a kid. It's honestly the game that I associate the Super Nintendo with the most because it was pretty much the only Mario game that was never ported to any other console for the longest time, or at least it felt that way. Anytime I wanted to play it, I had to dig out my old Super Nintendo, and it was honestly kind of a hassle. So having this beautiful HD version that maintains all of the charm of the original is a dream come true, and I'm just very happy that this remake exists. Alright, we are getting into my top 3 now, and number 3 is going to be The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. This year, we finally got the long-awaited sequel to Breath of the Wild, and I had a great time playing through this game. I pretty much spent all of May and June exclusively playing Tears of the Kingdom. And now that the hype has died down, I've actually been hearing a fair amount of people saying that the world in this game isn't different enough when comparing it to Breath of the Wild. And while I can agree that there is quite a lot of asset reuse in this game, I feel that the positives far outweigh that criticism. I found the story and characters that you interact with throughout this game to be way more interesting. The world itself feels much more populated and active than it did in Breath of the Wild, and the story missions and dungeons that you explore while teaming up with different characters around Hyrule are now among some of my favorite Zelda moments of all time. Now, would I want there to be a third Zelda game set in this version of Hyrule? Definitely not. I think it's 100% time for Nintendo to move on, unless they do a third entry where Link explores a neighboring kingdom on a different continent, if that's even a thing that exists in the Zelda universe. But as a sort of Majora's Mask style sequel to Breath of the Wild, which, let's be honest, that's what we all expected Tears of the Kingdom to be, I couldn't have asked for a better experience. By July, I made sure that I had wrapped up the main story in Tears of the Kingdom, because a game that I had been waiting a decade for was finally coming out. Pikmin 4 is my second favorite game to release in 2023. It was a long time coming, but it was absolutely worth the wait. My favorite thing about Pikmin 4 is how similar it is to my favorite entry in the series, Pikmin 2. This time around, the main objective is once again collecting treasure, but instead of paying off a debt, our goal is harvesting some form of sparkly energy that exists within the treasure to find and rescue Captain Olimar. With 6 main areas to explore and honestly more caves and side challenges than I can even count, Pikmin 4 is by far the longest game in the series, taking me roughly 40 hours to 100% complete. This was a pleasant surprise because I remember Pikmin 3 feeling quite a bit shorter than I would have liked it to be. There are so many great new additions to the series introduced in this game, like your dog Ochi, who honestly breaks the game with how easily he can stun enemies. Ice Pikmin are also very powerful, being not only able to freeze water, but also pretty much every enemy you come across. And then you've got glow Pikmin and the introduction of nighttime levels, which are super fun survival challenges that are a really nice change of pace from the normal gameplay. I had such a great time playing through this game, and I was so sad when it was finally over. Thankfully, Pikmin 4 is selling incredibly well, so odds are Nintendo won't make us wait another decade for the inevitable Pikmin 5, or whatever they decide to call it. Alright, my top 3 are all very close this year, but when it comes down to it, I had to give the number 1 spot to Super Mario Bros. Wonder. I have gone on record complaining about how stale 2D Mario games have felt over the years now, but this is the game to finally change that. Growing up, 2D Mario platformers played a huge role in my introduction to gaming. Some of my favorite games of all time are Super Mario World, Yoshi's Island, and the Mario Land games on Game Boy. Super Mario Bros. Wonder finally captures that pure magic that I felt when playing those games as a kid, after many years of being disappointed by the endless regurgitation of bland new Super Mario Bros. Games. Taking place in a new kingdom full of brand new characters, enemies, and even power-ups, Wonder marks the end of Nintendo's Mario Mandate era. For those who don't know what I'm talking about, the Mario Mandate was basically a rule put in place since the early 2010s that stated Mario games must only use established characters and designs from the existing Mario brand with little to no deviation. It basically prevented any form of new characters or even slightly off-brand looking designs of existing characters from appearing in a Mario game, mainline or spin-off. It's the reason why character designs were changed in the Superstar Saga remake that I mentioned earlier. There is just so much to love about this game. First of all, Mario games have always had charming visuals and art direction, but honestly, I never expected a 2D Mario game to look this beautiful. Every area is bursting with color, there are so many new and unique enemy designs, the characters are all so animated and expressive, and of course, the game just plays like an absolute dream. It may even end up being my new favorite 2D Mario game ever. I just hope that a sequel isn't too far off because I beat this game in 2 sittings. This really is one of those games that I just could not put down. So with all of that being said, Super Mario Bros. Wonder is absolutely my game of the year, with Pikmin 4 and Zelda Tears of the Kingdom being a very close second and third. Feel free to let me know what your favorite games of 2023 are in the comments. You could even include any old games that you played this year as well, just like I did. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.